just want to invite you guys to another Fluid Webinar Series event. This is the Art of Creative, Understanding a New World of Creative and How to Design for Success. Today on the thing we have myself, as usual. I'll be your host and kind of guide us through everything, but I'm really excited that this month we have Ryan Anderson, Creative Director and Partner at Fluid. Ryan, you want to introduce yourself, say hello?
Hey everybody. So just really quickly, I've been in the advertising industry for about 20 years now, and I've just really loved the psychology of talking to people in the way that they want to be talked to, making sure that the demographic is talked to in the way that they prefer to be talked to.
And that's a great photo of Ryan. That's pretty much how he is all the time. We also want to today introduce Lee Houghton. Lee comes to us from YESCO Outdoor. And Lee, why don't you say hello and give yourself a quick introduction?
Yeah, great. I'm grateful to be here, guys. Thanks for asking me. Yeah, I work for YESCO Outdoor Media. I work specifically helping clients grow their business through outdoor advertising, through billboard advertising. It's kind of a passion of mine, be able to work with great companies here along the Wasatch Front and help them build their businesses and see them grow and drive leads to their business. So I've been in advertising in some form or another for just like Ryan, about 20 years now, and so it's a great passion of mine.
Awesome. Well, we're really happy you joined us today, Lee. Thanks again.
Thank you.
We'll go ahead. As usual, you guys can find us on Twitter at Fluid Webinar Series. You can find us on our company handles as well, at GetFluid and at YESCO Outdoor. Please feel free to send us any messages or anything, and we'll comment back to you. So why don't we just go ahead and jump right into it. I'm going to hand over the reins here to Ryan, and I think he's going to walk us through how the creative landscape has changed.
Okay, so as I mentioned before, it's all about figuring out the demographic and the way that they need to be talked to. And the reason that it's titled It's Different Now is because 20 years ago we needed to engage with an audience much differently than we need to now. And I want to run through a few slides of why that's the case. So today, there are roughly 2.4 billion people that are online in some form or another. Just a massive number of people. And if you break that down in the largest users per country, you see Asia up there with a little over 1 billion people just themselves, followed by Europe, and then North America down in the third spot. And but if we look at how popular it is, the active users, we see that North America takes the top spot. And what that means is using the internet on an almost daily basis, and sometimes several times a day. That's the internet penetration rate. And that's an interesting figure there because you see that Asia has dropped down to about the 7th or 8th place. And North America has risen to the top, and I'll discuss why that's important. So every day, 2.7 billion Facebook likes are recorded and 175 million tweets are sent. 4 billion hours of video is viewed, 7 petabytes or 10 to the 15th power photo content is added to Facebook every month. Just an incredible amount of information. In 2012, there were 6 billion mobile subscribers. That's equivalent to 87% of the world population. And then 2013 was an interesting year because people that hadn't quite decided that they wanted to upgrade to a smartphone, 2013 was the year that they wanted to have the internet in their pocket, meaning that they started to put their brain in their pocket. In 2014, there were more mobile devices on Earth than people, and in 2015, mobile internet usage is actually greater than desktop usage now.
That's incredible.
91% of mobile internet usage is still to socialize compared to 79% of desktop internet usage. And then we can break that down, how most people use their mobile devices. And this is actually fluctuating, month by month, but 61% for games, and then weather, math, social networking. But as you'll notice, a lot of these can all be done just on the internet themselves. And why that's interesting is because how the fact that we have our brains in our pockets now is affecting the brains in our heads. And what that means is as technology becomes a larger part of our lives, the result is a change in the way that we digest information. Now, as we know, our brain is always constantly being rewired. It's growing and changing the way that it figures things out on a minute-by-minute basis. And there's a UCLA study, and there have been several studies since this study that have found the same thing, which is interesting. The study showed that more activity is seen in the problem-solving and decision-making areas of the brain than in those that frequently use the internet than in those that don't. The study also suggests that increased use of the internet has also caused the average attention span to drop. And this is why talking to our demographic needs to be different now than it did 10 years ago even. So the average attention span in 2003 was, and that's wrong there, the 12 seconds. It's actually 12 minutes is what it was in 2003. The average attention span today is 5 seconds. Now, there are some studies that will say 8 seconds, 9 seconds, but it's a very minuscule amount of time that we will allow something the benefit of the doubt. Our attention spans have changed dramatically, and it's because of the way that we use the internet. When we go to the internet now, we're expecting to get information quickly and efficiently. And websites are even designed for that purpose, that when you go in, we're always trying to look at the way that somebody wants to engage with the website and make sure that they can get the relevant information as quickly as they can.
I'm sure a lot of you guys have heard of just the 5-second test, where if you're not able to understand the who, what, why, where of the page within 5 seconds, people will often bounce. And so I think this just kind of further confirms that idea that we really need to be optimizing our web pages to give people the information they need, or they're out of there.
And YouTube has actually even helped perpetuate this to where they let you skip ads after 5 seconds. And most people will skip the ads because the content they really want to see is beyond the ad. Some of the effects of a shortened attention span include forgetting the names and details of close friends and relatives, forgetting pots and pans on the stove, actually forgetting why you've walked into the next room, 5 seconds after you walked into the room. So traditional versus digital design. And what we have here is a graph where traditional design is mostly in-person networking, on-site activities, print and direct mail, trying to target your audience and wearing your brand, whereas digital is remarketing, smart and simple messages, content curation, diversify social media, and video marketing.
One here we did also miss is just the out-of-office marketing in the traditional world. And I kind of want to just stop here for a second and have a conversation with you guys here. Kind of from what Ryan has shown with the attention spans, I feel like it's the same in the traditional world as it is in the digital. And maybe, Lee, you can shed some light. How have things kind of changed on your side in the last few years?
Yeah, and I appreciate what Ryan has spoken to, because that change in attention span couples nicely into our particular industry. We especially in our digital billboard world, where we have 8-second dwell times on our digital ads on our digital billboards. That's in a lot of cases that's mandated by federal regulations or state regulations. So you're not zipping through these ads too quickly, but a lot of people are worried that that's not long enough to present your message. But as we've seen through some of these studies that Ryan's presented, 3, 4, 5 seconds, 8 seconds to consume a message couples very well when you're zooming past a billboard 55, 65 miles an hour. But it's similar. We've always had that issue and in our particular space because you're driving in a car. So we've always had to design ads around a 3 to 5 to 8 second time space in order to grab somebody's attention and have time enough for them to consume the information that they're going to be on there. And so we've always been have pushed to design to those specific limitations. And now, with, like I said, with the advent of the digital, where you might see a structure that has 6 to 8 ad flips, you may see 2 to 3 ads or a couple partial ads in that time frame, that depending on what rush hour happens to be doing or the flow of traffic has been doing. But it's very true in the same sense in our media, just by nature of where our media is actually placed is interesting. Is interesting statistic that Brian brought out. So.
Absolutely. And Lee, I feel like it's been in the last few years that I've seen the digital billboards pop up. When did you guys start putting those into production?
We actually had the very first digital ad down in Orem. I'd say it's probably been, it was prior to me coming to YESCO, so it's been over 4 years. So I would say probably 5 to 6 year range now. It could be a little bit longer. I could be incorrect, but we were actually the first digital billboard in the state, and now you see them across the in about every major location now, up and down the Wasatch Front.
Absolutely. And just from your experience, talk a little bit through and maybe I'm putting you on the spot here, or even kind of misspeaking as far as, but talk about the traditional billboard, which is the static, versus the digital, and maybe how design has changed, if it even has.
Yeah, that's a great question. Thank you for that. In fact, we just had a discussion today. Our national trade organization, OAAA, has just published a study, an extensive study. They used Nielsen to put together this study on the effectiveness of digital advertising. We did one with the regular static bulletins a few years ago, and it was pretty incredible. But they just completed one just within the last few weeks, based just strictly on digital billboards. Obviously, there's a format difference. You've got a vinyl up there. It doesn't change. It's static. There's really no dynamic interaction with it. The digital brings in quite a few additional benefits. The fact that you could change ad copy out as frequently as you need. If you need to day part your ad copy, you want an ad in the morning that speaks to a specific audience that's commuting to work versus one in midday or afternoon or evening or even the weekend. So you could day part those messages out without having to print a new vinyl and pay for additional installation. So you don't accrue those costs. The ability to really do an RSS feed. We can RSS feed from websites directly to our digital boards. So we've got several clients that have utilized that. Some of your HVAC companies, you know, when a temperature hits a certain level, their AC ad comes up. If it dips below a certain level, then their heating ad comes up. It just kind of all depends. So you have a lot more interaction that way. Plus, it's really a great way to really maybe test ads. You know, if you wanted to really do some significant A/B testing, you know, when you want to run an ad that maybe drives traffic to a phone number versus a website, you can run that pretty cost effectively and see what kind of traffic you get versus using one or the other. So there's some really cool things, and you'll notice, you know, some advertisers have really utilized the ability to or have integrated those features into their advertising strategy. Grocery stores offering, you know, eggs for a certain price, or milk, or news, television news stations advertising specific, headline stories that they're going to be showing on the news in the evening. You know, people have grown accustomed to expecting change on those digital ads, where they know the vinyl ads, you know, you may do, you know, a change out on a vinyl maybe quarterly, whereas on the digital ad, not only do they expect it, it's almost like the demand is there for it. They want to see a new ad. They want to see what the next one is. So we've kind of been able to mold the commuter audience into expecting something new, and which is driven us to provide that newness and that freshness. You know, you imagine, you know, you design a billboard ad for maybe an annual campaign. You may do 4, 5, or 6 billboard ads. Now it puts pressure on the creative team to come up with ads that might be 3 or 4 different ads in one day for a particular thing, or several in a week. So it's put, I don't want to say strain, but it's caused us to reevaluate how creative is actually developed and deployed, and the deployment of the creative on the billboard is easy. You know, I always get that last minute call on a Friday evening of a Labor Day sale, and as long as we've got the ad, you know, 5 or 10 minutes, you know, they've got it up and loaded, and they're ready to go, and they haven't skipped a beat. So
I really like that about the digital boards now. I used to not like them as much as the vinyl boards, because they were a little hard to see in the early days. The technology wasn't as bright as it is now, but now with the new boards, they're actually, in some cases, even better than the vinyls.
Yeah, the resolution on them are quite good now. I took a tour of a plant that manufactures them, and you can almost pull a couch up to them now, and use them as a television set. They're quite good, and the resolution's high, and because of the the technology, we're able to measure, you know, sunrise, sunset, so we can change illumination to accommodate those kind of weird hours, you know, that 6 to 8 in the morning kind of a thing, especially if you live along the Wasatch Front. You have the sun coming over the mountains, and then kind of those other weird illumination times, you know, maybe 5 to 7 or 4 to 6 in the afternoon, when you're kind of in a you know, you're not dark and you're not full bright of the sun. So we're able to accommodate that and gauge that based upon, you know, the ambient lighting, what's happening around that, and adjust illumination based upon that.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
You know, one other point I think there is to be made here is, you know, along with billboard, even just traditional as a whole, Ryan talks about the move to mobile, and we're seeing all this traffic on, desktop and mobile devices. But really, it almost has left a void back in the traditional space, where a leave behind is really working well. A well-targeted mailer is working well. And so I think as we kind of look at everything from a digital eye, we often forget about traditional in a way, and yet that could be a really big miss for a lot of our marketing channels and whatnot. And so I think it's almost interesting just to see how many people are going that direction, which ultimately creates a void in the traditional space and kind of opens up or I guess diminishes the amount of noise in those areas, and so it can be highly effective. And I know we've done both leave behind, direct mailers, and billboards that we've found huge success with our clients, and so I find that kind of interesting.
Well, and it's really just about delivering the right message in the right medium to the right people. And you know, a lot of people say newspapers are dead, and really they're not dead, because there's all of these people along the Wasatch Front that still are taking Deseret News, the Tribune, and the reason for that is because they're the older generation that's become accustomed to that, and that's the way they prefer to digest their news for the most part. And that eventually will go away as that demographic does, but it's really not traditional versus digital. It's the right medium for the right group.
Absolutely agree. Let's go to the next slide, and we'll actually get into some examples. First, just traditional versus digital design, some of the pros and cons. Obviously, in the digital marketing space, you can reach a large number of people across large geography, where traditional marketing may be more targeted and has a slightly smaller audience. The digital is a little bit more versatile, but I think, as Lee's been speaking, that with the new digital billboards, that the versatility is there to the point that you can put up that same-day concert or the same-day produce prices, whatever it may be. You can kind of do those things on the fly. So at least in the billboard space, I see that one being resolved. Obviously, in print, once it's been printed, you can't change it. It has to run for as long as it can, but again, even so, printers have really adapted and can run one ad one day and another the next, and so they're getting a little bit more versatile in that space. And then just digital, it can be immediate versus the delayed communication of traditional marketing. So I think those are some of the pros and cons, but as we spoke to on the last slide, it really is the right medium for the right audience. And so I don't believe that traditional or digital have, ownership over the other. So I think that they both need to be considered. I think we'll just quickly talk a little bit about how-to for creative design today. Ryan here has given us a couple of suggestions. You want to speak to these?
Yeah, and the reason is because we go back to how our brains have changed because of the consumption of the internet, how easily we're able to get information into our heads, and our attention spans want it now, they want it quickly, and so the best way that we've found in talking to a particular audience is a couple of suggestions. One is simplicity, and the second is storytelling, and I'll talk a little bit about both of those. So Leonardo da Vinci said simplicity is the ultimate form of sophistication, and Henry David Thoreau said simplify, 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 but Luke Sullivan says this, simplify, which is, taking what Henry David Thoreau said and actually taking it down, giving him some of his own medicine, I guess. And that's really what, as a marketer today, we need to do, is how can we deliver the messages as quickly and efficiently as we can, knowing that we only have a very short period to deliver that. And if we're just talking visually, I wanted to give a couple of examples. The first one here is for Toyota, and we see that the bars along the road, the safety bars, are actually bending inward rather than outward. So the car hasn't actually driven off the road. It has been down into the valley and has come back onto the road. Very strong form of visual, but very simple, not even any copy, really just a logo and very simple message. And then Scotch tape, bending the nail and then holding it up with Scotch tape, talking about the strength. Very simple ways to deliver a very clever and quick message. And then storytelling. And storytelling really trying to delve into the emotions that are really going to drive somebody to take action. And that's really what we're trying to do, is talk to our demographics so that they will, make a purchase or come to an event, whatever we're trying to get them to do. And stories are really good at engaging people quickly. Howard Gossage, one of the advertising greats, said people don't read ads, they read what interests them, and sometimes it is an ad. And this is what storytelling allows us to do, is dive into what interests somebody. And if they can forget that it's an advertisement and really just think of it as some form of entertainment, then we've won.
I think this is really interesting. With most of our campaigns, emotions almost always win, and when we sit down with clients, we often just hear all about the company, hear about the benefits of a product, and when we try to run with campaigns of that nature, we're far less successful against when we actually talk about the emotional appeal of the product or the emotional appeal of the company. Actually leading kind of into this slide of Procter & Gamble, I'll let Ryan speak to it, but I just really encourage all our listeners out there to really figure out what is the emotional aspect of your product, your service, or whatever it is that people are drawn to, and turn your ads into those rather than, this is an about us, about our company kind of a thing. It just works a whole lot better, and I think you'll find a lot more success.
So this ad, just a quick setup, there's an agency in Oregon, Wyden and Kennedy, and they were really trying to appeal to moms during the Olympics, knowing that moms are the ones that buy most of these products that they're trying to sell. And they ran this ad. It's really just a storytelling ad that really, do we need to go to the YouTube?
I think you might. With interest of time, I don't know if we'll actually be able to play the video. But we will send these out as links to everybody, and you guys will be able to follow. These are a selection of some of the best videos that we kind of have compiled, and there's actually a lot more that we couldn't put into this slide deck, and so we'll actually get you guys an entire list with some links, and you guys can watch them on your own time.
And then just to really quickly summarize this, they talked about how moms are really the ones that have helped these athletes get up to the great athletes that they are today, and it was through storytelling that they had done that. Same with this. Most people have seen this one, but this ran during the Super Bowl a few years ago, this Volkswagen Darth Vader spot, which told a story that that drew people in quickly, grabbed them within that 5 seconds, and then had a great payoff at the end. And then making it shareable. In today's world, we need to get as much traction as we can with any message that we put out on the web. And so anytime that you can allow somebody to share it, whether it's Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, whatever it is, Pinterest, making sure that you make it very easy for somebody to share it with their followers, because that's going to get the message out much more efficiently than anything else that we can do.
And this slide's just kind of to show some of the different, tools or mediums that are out there that you can use, and then some of the techniques that you combine those with to get them out. And it's part of the, you can use on the traditional side the billboards, radio, TV, more digital, memes, animated videos, viral videos, infographics, and really what we wanted to do is just give you a thinker sample. I'm sure you guys can come up with your own, design or content pieces that you use, but these are some that people aren't using every day. They're out there a lot, you see them with bigger companies, but some of the smaller companies aren't putting a lot of these out, and they're super successful. And then how are you using them? Making something go viral, I think, is agreed, but around the industry and with pretty much everybody, that nobody knows the secret sauce to making something go viral. There's a lot of luck in it, obviously, but, can you watch other viral videos and see what they do and attempt to do something similar? And if it doesn't go, viral in the true sense, it might, spread within your own community and have a very strong impact. But among those, you can use Vine videos, YouTube, social obviously just being huge this day and age, and there's so many ways to use it. I just encourage you guys to think out of the box. You know, what you see every day, try and find the top ones that make you smile, make you share, and figure out what did they do differently than all the other noise. Your blog, you can be really creative here. A lot of blogs don't have share buttons on them, or if they do, they have them in the wrong spaces. And for me, I don't love share buttons, to be honest. What I like to do is I like to embed key statistics or key phrases from the blog into a dynamic content box, and you can actually share that directly, and people are far more likely to do that than have to share the whole page and come up with what they're going to type. It just makes it a lot faster, and it makes it so you can kind of control the message as well. And then there's augmented reality, 3D imaging, parallax websites, and we'll actually get into some of those in a little bit more detail, but I want you guys to just look at this slide and try to brainstorm some new ideas that you might be able to use. And so for the next little bit, we'll just actually go through some different ideas that you guys might employ and show you some of the great creative that we've appreciated. And again, we'll consolidate all of this and send it out to everybody as well.
And this isn't a really comprehensive list, but it is just giving examples. So traditional, you know, it's been around forever. We've got magazines, billboards, TV, and there's actually a small gap between traditional and digital now, and anytime that gap can be bridged, inviting somebody to go to a web page or to interact in some way with the product beyond just the traditional media form is really the key. Great creative design.
I mean, I think these are kind of hilarious. There's some, IKEA's Dream Kitchens and just the way they made this website, if you guys go look at that. But even just bring up Susan Boyle, kind of crossing from the television aspect to going viral online. There's just really interesting things that we know in our everyday. The top one is Grumpy Cat. Everybody knows Grumpy Cat, I think, at this point. One of the most watched channels in the history of YouTube, but they made them into mimes, they make it into YouTube videos. It's a whole entire persona at this point. And so what are some funny things that you guys can do that are a little bit out of the box? And that can be both on the B2B, very professional side, or even on the B2C, more creative side, but it works for both groups. Dove's evolution of just kind of showing the evolution of the true face all the way down to the Photoshop face actually went viral as well, and really started a whole entire conversation around more than just Dove, but Dove was the ultimate, they benefited the most because it was tagged to them over and over again, and so subconsciously we have Dove placed in our minds. And there's just a lot of ways to do this, and these are, again, just a very few select examples, but I want you guys to look at the ones you really like the most and figure out what is it you guys can do to be just a little bit different.
You know, and I love how memes give everybody the opportunity to try to do something creative.
Yeah.
It seems like within minutes of something happening, there are dozens of memes already hitting the internet. So augmented reality is this new interesting technology to where you can, within the real world, incorporate digital images and experiences, as you see here, seeing what a watch would look like on your wrist with your mobile device. So doing shopping in both the real world and the digital world, and for instance, looking at what a new kitchen may look like in your existing kitchen. All of these technologies exist, and I think are just great tools for helping not only to sell products, but to give people interactive and more interesting and entertaining experiences. And then 3D mapping technology has been around for a while, but it's been really utilized within the last couple of years to where you can take a space, a building, a stage, whatever it is, and you can map to that particular space an entertaining experience. And companies like Mini have used this to sell cars. National Geographic has used it to sell magazines and driving people to their website. Really interesting technology to where the space is mapped, much like augmented reality, but it's for a particular space rather than, you know, any space.
I think this one's my favorite, and I really look forward to seeing more of it around town and just the areas that you can use it. Lee, are you guys discussing 3D mapping at all? Do you have anything with projectors, or do you see any of that on the horizon?
No, you know, it's kind of hard because our medium is. I mean, I think if you look historically, like Ben Franklin was the first user of billboards. You know, I mean, it's been around for a long time. What we see, you know, with the digital billboards, but now we're seeing some kind of cool stuff with actually 3D printing on the vinyls.
Okay.
There's some experimentation that's going on with that people are utilizing that, so you kind of give this 3D image to your billboard vinyls, and it works well in that way because sometimes, you know, when you look at a 3D image close up, the closer you get, you lose a lot of what the image is, and so it's naturally made for people who are at a farther distance to appreciate the image. But yeah, there's several things I've seen with dinosaur museums and things like that have used 3D printing technology on the billboard vinyls. For us, it's more about utilizing the whole structure. We ran a recent campaign for Hogle Zoo where we had a face of a giraffe on the billboard, but we painted the pole the giraffe's neck. So you see a lot of kind of things like that, you know, and we always try to encourage people to not just look at the rectangular real estate, but look at things that might extend past it or come off of it. You know, someone who's maybe rappelling down the front of it. You know, the cows, the Chick-fil-A cows is a great example of actually having you know, those forms on there, and then actually even going down into the poles. And if the structure's right or the land is right, even spreading out into the surrounding ground and area around the pole. So we've seen that quite a bit over the years, but I think some of the exciting stuff is happening in some of this 3D printing that you know that we're seeing, you know, in different areas. That's kind of cool.
Sure. I got to say, I think the Chick-fil-A cows that's fantastic. I love those every time I pass one.
Oh yeah, they're great.
So just to kind of quickly summarize, the world's population is basically plugged in. About 87% of the world with mobile phone. That's pretty incredible, actually. Obviously, mobile dominates, where most people are consuming digital or just consuming all the internet ads and just pretty much spending their time. Our brains have been rewired. Things have really changed, and we've gone from 12 minutes to 5 seconds in attention span in only a few years at this point. It's pretty impressive. Designed for simplicity and storytelling. I honestly just don't think there's anything more important than designing for emotion. That's really what gets people to make a purchase. And so if your guys' collateral isn't designed with emotion, if your website's not, if your social isn't, it really ought to be. And so you might take a closer look at that. Make everything shareable. There's so many people willing to be free advocates for your brand. Make use of them and find ways that things interest them so that they will share it. And then lastly, kind of think out of the box. For traditional, it's the same but different. People are taking the exact same mediums and doing a lot of different things with them. If you just think about that Old Spice commercial, that's just yet another commercial, but they were so much more clever, and the effect that had on their bottom line was just massive. And so, think about what you're doing and then try to find a different way, but you can always just use the same mediums in a different way. Digital, I think it's really the omni-channel experience, meaning across social, across the different devices, your landing pages, your website, your banner ads, all of it kind of telling the same story, and oftentimes you can kind of walk people through the message depending on what ad they see. If they come to a landing page, they get one version, and then if they don't convert, you can send them a retargeting ad, which is just an extension of the same conversation from the landing page, but it's not a direct copy of the landing page. And then once they click on that retargeting ad, they go back to a new landing page that, again, just continues that conversation. And so I think if you actually did a true storyboard with your ads, you can make it a lot more interesting, and people will start to kind of discover and give you your brand a lot of respect. And then lastly, just augmented reality, 3D mapping. There's a lot of different new technologies out there. You might want to look into them, see if they're appropriate for your business at this time. So this time we'll go ahead and just take a few questions. Give us 1 sec and we'll pull this up. So the first question we had came in is more from, I believe, a execution standpoint, and I'll throw this one over to you, Ryan. What are the few key areas you can focus on to make your own in-house creative better?
Making our own in-house creative better in terms of, advertising for ourselves, or in terms of just for any particular client. Usually what we try to do is, we call it concepting, but it's basically brainstorming. It's giving yourself the appropriate amount of time to be creative. Now that we understand who the audience is, how can we talk to them in the most, the best way for that particular audience? And one thing that I like to do is get off-site. It's easier to be creative in an environment that isn't completely familiar to you already. And so riding the bus, going down to Starbucks, Barnes & Noble, wherever it is, and just getting to a place that it feels a little different really helps start the creative juices flowing. Reading a lot of the advertising annuals is really good to see what the trends are and to see what other people are doing, because that can be inspiring as well. So those are a couple of things that I do is reading the annuals and then getting off-site, and then giving yourself the appropriate amount of time. Creativity can't be hurried sometimes. You need adequate time.
I think that's some great suggestions. So those are some great suggestions. And the getting it on site is just a great idea, I think. I don't know that we do that enough, and putting ourselves in our customers' shoes is just so important. What your company thinks of your product can be very different than the consumer, the way that they perceive it. And one of the best ways to learn that as well is to go talk with your customer service. Sales always has, what they believe people are in need of, but customer service is the one that's really getting the true feedback, and I think you can often rely on them for some really great ideas as well. Lee, do you have thoughts on that at all?
I like, when I sit down with my clients, I try to get them to really think about what they do really well. What is the one thing that if you drill down and you stripped out all the other services and products and things they offer, what's the one thing they're really proud of? What's the one thing that they feel is what makes them them? And then kind of build off of that. You go to a mechanic. Everyone knows mechanics can do oil changes and adjust your carburetor, change your tires, all those kinds of things. But maybe it's about same-day service, whatever it is, having your car done within 2 hours, or courtesy cars, or whatever. It's really finding out what's their key element, and then building off of that. And so you guys have probably seen this. Sometimes when you ask that question, your clients really struggle. They don't know what it is. They can't pinpoint that. But once you hit that, then that's really the place from where you can start to build from. Actually, is that point.
Absolutely, would agree.
Yeah.
Thank you, guys. Another question, this one's actually for you, Lee.
Oh.
I work in a B2B environment and have seen competitors doing billboards, but I'm not sure if it's right for us. So I just lost it. Which B2B industries do billboards work best for?
Oh, that's a great question. We get that all today, all the time, because that's a key thing. I suggest, if anyone the more people that utilize your product within an organization, so let's say a piece of software, let's say you have a CRM, and you require everyone in your organization to use it, that's a business to business. There's only a few people that are going to be a part of that decision-making process to actually purchase that piece of software, but you're going to hear the complaints of 1,000 people or 100 people or 20 people within the organization. So you may have someone driving down the freeway who really hates their CRM, and they bring it to the attention, and they see a billboard ad, and then they bring it to the attention of maybe their sales manager or their supervisor, who then funnels that complaint up the line. So technology always seems to do pretty well, business to business, and pretty much anything where you're going to have other people in an organization that can use your product or your service, that will typically do fairly well. So that's one of the main questions we have when we get a client that typically sells business to business is, how is this going to work? That's one of the questions we ask, or that's where we try to get into. Another thing is, if you're targeting a specific individual or a specific department or a decision-making team within a company, sometimes you can run an ad that targets those specific individuals. We've seen that in a few cases in construction equipment, where there's specific buyers that are only going to buy this piece of construction equipment, but they position the billboard ad right in front of the building where all these, or close to the off-ramp where these people go to work. The 3 or 4 purchasers that they're responsible for buying that piece of equipment are going to be driving past. And so those are very effective. That's a very targeted, a very specific, where you're actually targeting an individual, and then you couple that maybe with some LinkedIn ads and then some direct mail and things like that, and you've got a very targeted ad. So technology by far is a great, start from there. And then, we'd be happy to help you run analyze it a little bit more to see if it's maybe something's just not going to work well on a billboard.
Sure. And I think that's people would appreciate that. We operate in a similar fashion of we want to make sure that it's going to work, and so we want to sit down with our clients and make sure that we have a combined strategy to deliver the best product. And oftentimes, one medium won't work as well as the other, and so we'll shift budget so we are putting it in an area that actually is functional. And so I think that's something that a lot of people appreciate, is the fact that you are going to look at it and you're going to help them make the right choice.
Right.
One more question here we have, kind of funny. My creative is old and outdated, but I don't have time to do everything. For kind of a creative rebrand, where do you begin, and how can I make the most of my time? Ryan, you want to answer that?
Creative rebrand. So with creative rebranding, it's really just finding the elements that are working and making sure that those aren't touched, or if they are touched, making sure that they're enhanced, because you never want to throw the baby out with the bathwater. So you first find the things that are working and then expand on those. Logos are the simplest form of a brand, and so making sure that the logo stays intact if necessary, and then expanding to colors, fonts, and really the brand of a company even expands beyond that. It's Best Buy has the blue T-shirt and things like that. So it's really making sure that you don't lose the important aspects of the brand, enhance what you need to, and then consistency.
And just kind of expanding on that, if they have, collateral documents versus a website, where would you start? Do you start with print stuff and, get that updated for leave-behinds? Would you do a website? How would you kind of make that decision?
And I think it really depends on the company and the demographic that they're trying to reach, but typically the clients that we work with, we start with the website, we get the website to where it needs to be, and then everything else comes out of the website, because most people that are interacting with a particular company are going to experience their brand through the website first. And so it just makes sense that the website would be the starting point for most.
And I'll add to that, just even with some of our clients where a website can be an undertaking, we've found ways of doing what we call microsites with, a few landing pages that will have the future brand on it, but you don't have to go through the entire design. And so that's a way of kind of getting a good start on it, as in the background you work on the full website and you can even do some things with collateral. And so I think I think Ryan makes a great point as to, what is your demographic and what's going to work best for you guys. We appreciate the shout-out, Linda Hansen. We can help you with your rebranding, and there's a lot of things from a marketing aspect we would love to help out with you with at any time. But we also help this webinar get you guys and your brand and your marketing department just kind of working a little bit better, whether it's with our help or not. That does kind of lead us into an appropriate next question, which is, when is it appropriate for you to consider an agency for creative versus making an internal hire? Do you have experience with that, Ryan?
I do, and a lot of companies will hire internally, and then after they've have an internal copywriter or designer, they will still partner with an agency. And the reason for that is because a lot of times a particular company is only able to see their business, and this is the way that I say it, deep in the trees, standing from the forest, where an agency is able to get up on a hillside and then look at the whole forest at the same time. And that's because when you're in a company, you start to form your own ideas and perspectives about who you are as a company. And a lot of people like to partner with agencies because then they're able to go out and find out what the perceptions outside of a company are and then address those.
Fantastic. Well, we've come a little to our time. I'll leave you with one last question. I don't know if we have the answer to this, but it's how much does augmented reality cost?
And it really depends on how deep you want to go into it. I mean, it can be thousands of dollars, and that's probably a starting point, at least a couple of thousand for something simple, up to, probably close to millions.
Yeah.
As well, depending how far you wanted to go with it. But as with most technologies, the longer it's been in place, the more economical it becomes.
That's a great point. I won't lie, that was my question, because I want to do it personally. I love that stuff. Anyway, that's all the questions that we have for today. I want to thank everybody for coming. Especially thank you, Lee, for joining us on the call today.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks for having me.
And thanks to all of those who attended today. Remember, you can always contact us using the hashtag #FluidWebinarSeries or just tweet direct to our profiles there. And just want to let you know, next month's webinar is going to be about Google. And if you guys want to really know where or which marketing channels are working and how to use attribution to determine which ones should be given more budget and which ones might need to be turned off, and in general, just some of the amazing tools that Google really offers to marketers, whether you're an in-house agency or marketing team or an ad agency. It's going to be a really informative and great webinar, so we encourage you guys to attend next month as well. So once again, from the side of Fluid and YESCO Outdoor Media, we say thank you for attending and have a great day.
Thank you.
Thank you.